Hey there, Nick Hackers here. In this video, we're going to go over how to recursively print out files of a specific type in a directory of your choosing. Now, you might be thinking, Nick, when in the world are you ever going to use that? And that's a really good question. It actually did come up last week doing some contract work. And I think it's important to go over the why before we go over the how. And by the way, the how is going to include using commands like find, cat, tail. We're even going to be using shell globbing as well. But yeah, so this came up recently where a company asked me to help them move from Apache to Nginx. These are both different web servers. We're not going to spend a lot of time on what these are here. But one thing about Apache is you tend to have these things called .htaccess files, and they could be littered all over the place. So imagine that you've got this 10-year-old PHP application with, hundreds of different directories, and who knows how many htaccess files are in the project. There could be, dozens of them, and there could be, thousands of lines of configuration. And all of this configuration would need to be ported over from Apache to Nginx. And I wanted to very quickly just get a lay of the land here. Basically, show me all the htaccess files and also cat out or, print out all the contents of all those htaccess files. I just want to see them at a glance to get an idea, what am I working with here, right? Is this going to be like a 2-hour job or a 20-hour job? Or, maybe the suggestion there is not even to do the move because maybe it's too risky because there's too many files, or, maybe we can do this incrementally over time, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea here. So that was my use case there. And yeah, I just came across a couple of commands here to do that. And throughout this video, I did set up an example directory here with a couple of different htaccess files in all sorts of different nested directories here. I can't just copy code from the client work there, but yeah, we're going to have an example of how to get rolling there. And I am going to go over the commands here in the order where I kind of just naturally discovered them by trying things out. And yeah, we'll come to the final result in the end here. But, if you were to incrementally break down this problem, the first thing is basically just show me all the htaccess files, right? Where are they even located? How many there are? Because that's a really good thing to know too, independent of their content. So we can use the find command here, find things in the current directory. What do we want to do? We want to find the name of access or htaccess there. We can also say that we want to get the type to be file as well, because if there were a directory named htaccess there like that, we wouldn't want to have that included. So here we can see that in this little example that I have here, there are 4 specific htaccess files in these little nested paths here that I have here. Now, with the client work, it was a lot different, right? There was 25 htaccess files with 600-700 lines of configuration. So that is the first step of the puzzle here, right? Find all the htaccess files. And using find, you can use the exec flag here. And you can say, well, for each file that you find, let's execute a specific command here. And we can use cat, right? Because, before I even run this one here, I do have an htaccess file in the current directory. You can just run cat on that, and it is going to output the file there, just like we saw there. So let's do that. Let's go with executing cat, and this is basically a placeholder for the file that we find. And then we want to say, well, this is actually one of those things where it's I just know to add that at the end of the command. I'm sure there's a good explanation out there somewhere, or let us know in the comments below if you have a better way to explain that. It's something with terminating, knowing that this is the end of the cat command or whatever, and we need to escape the semicolon. I don't know, something like that. But here we go. So we just now went through all the different htaccess files recursively, all the files that match the htaccess file name here in the current directory. We executed cat on all of them, and here we get the output that we have here. And we sort of have our answer now, right? We can see all the contents of all the htaccess files here, and these are pretty small for the sake of this example here. And by the way, also just want to say that my, expertise or whatever, I've got a lot more knowledge with Nginx, not Apache, so do not take these rules or these rules here as basically best practices or whatever. I kind of just grabbed a couple off the internet and dropped them in there so we had something to work with, because yeah, I just don't want to take code specifically from the project here. But in any case, this is okay, but it's also a little bit hard to read. Everything is super condensed down. There's no white space at all. We have no idea even what file names are associated to the content that we see here. And that is kind of a problem, right? I mean, me as someone who's assessing the situation, I kind of needed to know a little bit more context. Where is this coming from? Is this in one directory or the other? Is there something specific about the application we need to worry about? So we can take this one step further here, and we can just add print, which is another flag here to find. And then we can now see that we do have the file paths printed before the content. So we can see oh, cool. Well, there's this one super nested htaccess file, and it's got this one permanent redirect here for this. Cool. And this is kind of nice, but also it's a little bit easy to read here because there's only a couple of examples. But again, imagine you've got 25, 30 of these htaccess files, and there's 700 lines. It's very hard to read this, right? You can't really skim that. So We can take this one step further, and instead of using print here, we can actually just use printf, and then we can start defining like whatever way that we want to split things up here. So there is a little shortcut that find gives us. We can do %p here, which is going to get the file path here, and let's just wrap that in a couple of new lines here. And now when we run it, now things are a little bit easier to read, right? We got this really nice white space here. At a glance, it's not too bad here, but again, there are no spaces in these example files here that I put here, but imagine there were, quite a few spaces there. So just like skimming this as a human being for spaces here, I don't know, it's like not the best. I know you can add you can add a couple more new lines, something like this, right? Let's add a couple more. And then it's like, yeah, you got a lot of grouping here with the spaces, and that's kind of neat. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we can do just a tiny bit better here. And it's not quite better. It's just an alternative here. So, we can just not use the custom printing here and not use cat, but instead we can just use tail. And tail will, typically give you, let's say, the last 10 lines of a file or something like that. But you can say, you know what, give me the entire file contents here. And this is one of those cases where I think I need to change that to a plus instead of a backslash. Yeah, there we go. And can we even get rid of the semicolon? Apparently we can. So yeah, so we can run it like this, right? And we get a very similar output to what we just saw before using cat. But tail, when you pass it in a file like this, it will, or multiple files, it will give you, these little separators without you needing to manually set up like custom prints with new lines and stuff like that. And these little ASCII arrows are kind of nice because if you are scanning this as a human being, this is actually a little bit easier to see, in my opinion, than a couple of spaces, especially when you're dealing with a bigger file that actually has natural spaces or new lines in it. So, I actually ended up rolling with this one in the end, just because, in my case, I just had a one-off command that I wanted to run and get the answer of what I got here. Yeah, I was able to quickly skim things, assess the situation. We will be moving to Nginx. It will just take some time. And yeah, and by the way, this is one of those things where it's like, we're not just like haphazardly moving for the heck of it. Like they've got some, business cases around that. They've got some expertise with Nginx instead of Apache. They just don't have the staff to do it. So anyways, this isn't about like moving one to the other. It's like just a specific use case for the context of this video, right? But yeah, this will give you a, pretty portable way to do this, right? If you're running Bash or Z Shell, you should be able to run this one. Should also be able to work on macOS, I think. I think there was a situation where if there was no space there, or if you had the space here, it didn't work on macOS, but with the space it does. So should be good to go there. Let me know in the comments below if it doesn't work for you, because I am using WSL2 over here. Now, we can technically do even better. And, I kind of ended at that, but I also, curiosity is something I'm curious about in general. Like I'm curious about curiosity. So I just ended up Googling around, like, how to actually do this in potentially different ways. And yep, you can actually just use shell globbing instead. For example, I am using Z shell here, but check this out. If I do shell globbing on the htaccess file here with the double star, that's what the globbing is there, that's actually going to cat out every single htaccess file recursively for me. Like I don't need to worry about, putting in every individual file path. Like this is going to expand out and do that. But again, like, it's a little bit hard to read everything right there, but we can just use the tail command that we saw before, right? We can just do that and then boom, we're done. So this is pretty convenient. And I think just for doing a one-off on Z shell, this is the way to go in my opinion. It's also faster than the find one. We'll go over benchmarking in a second here, but let's say that, maybe you're not using Z shell, right? Maybe you're using Bash. So let me load up Bash here and see if we can get this to work here. So if I, try to run that, and let me just clear that. I just pasted it. Yep, we can see here that it only got the htaccess file in the current directory. It ignored all of this globbing syntax here, and it didn't do any globbing. So what you actually need to do here with Bash, by default, unless you already explicitly enabled it, you need to enable this thing called the globstar. And you can check if it's enabled or not by running this command here, like shop-t globstar. We can see that globstar is off. So we actually need to enable that here. So what we could do is we can do shop T here -s globstar. That is going to enable globbing. So if we run this here, we can see that it's enabled. And now if we rerun this command here, it is going to work. Like the cat command also works, just in case you want to see it. Just kidding, apparently. Oh, because I put like 17 different flags there. Yep, cool. So yeah, so if you're using Bash, then you can just do that. If you want to disable the globstar, you can do, instead of -s that we saw before, you can just do -u. If you want to just get fancy too, you can do the S here to enable it. Then you can run your command, and then you can use the U flag variant of it to disable it. If you put this into a shell script, you can just enable the globstar in your shell script using -s, run all your stuff and get rid of it. Really multiple different options there. I mean, I guess technically too with bash, you can put that command inside of your bash.rc file. So globstar is always enabled. That's up to you. Preferences are there. But I just want to let you know that, if you are using bash, you do have that option. And by the way, if you are using macOS, I do not think this is going to work on bash 3.2 or 3.1, whatever comes with macOS by default. So you will need to brew install bash to get a newer version. You will need bash 4 to enable that. Going back to benchmarking things, there really isn't a huge major difference, I guess. Like, I don't know. It's even interesting. Like the project I was working on had many thousands of lines or many different files, thousands of files. And using both of those options were fast enough to where like it didn't even matter, right? Like I just ran the command and it was like, doop, I got the answer back in, I don't know, 50 milliseconds, whatever. I didn't time it. It was fast enough where like I didn't even have to think about it. But if you did want to mess around here and be like, well, is one faster than the other? Basically, is this tail solution faster like this? Or is it faster like this? Like, would you have an idea of which one is going to be faster off the top of your head? Let us know in the comments before or below before I actually run the commands here to benchmark them. But you can just run the time command here, and we can see at the bottom here, it's taking 3 total, like, whatever that is, 3 milliseconds, microseconds, it doesn't really matter. Well, it matters, but it doesn't really matter for the sake of like, it is consistently, 003, once in a while 002, right? This is super informal benchmarking. But again, like I just wanted to do something to, just get an idea, a rough access of what was up there. So let's go back to, this one over here, and we'll time this one. And if I do the same thing here, it's like consistently 002, right? It's never going to the 003. It's never dropping down to 1. I don't know. You can make a case here like this is a little bit faster, and I guess it's slightly more efficient, right? We don't need to run the find command that's going to execute tail for each one of the files that it finds. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it gets smart with that plus sign at the end that kind of puts them as arguments to tail. I'm not really sure the inner details there, but in this case, this globbing, I guess, just expands all the files that it finds, and you just end up calling tail once with all the arguments, something like that. I hope that's accurate, or at least in the ballpark of accurate. But in any case, like for me, I don't know, if I'm going to be doing a one-off command like this in the future, I am going to be going with the shell globbing over here because I am using Z shell. It's all set up and ready to go. Syntax is pretty easy to remember here. And with that said, let me know in the comments below what is your preference. And by the way, quick one too, like if you did need to do a POSIX compliant way of doing this, then that find command that we're looking at before, that is going to do it. So if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up because it really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next one.